When compared to the auto key method of creating keyframes, you'll find that the set key technique works just a little different. Auto key is just that. It's automatic. Anytime the command has been activated, anything and everything you do from that point on will be remembered and stored within a keyframe. The set key function in comparison requires a slightly different thought process, as things are done not automatically but in a more manual way. Let's take a look at a couple of examples. So we can more easily distinguish between the auto key and set key operations, let's begin our discussion using the same example that we worked on in a previous chapter video, which had us using the auto key method of keyframing. We'll create a sphere in the upper left-hand corner of our view. Let's now activate the set key feature found below the timeline on the right-hand side of our interface. We could also choose to use instead the shortcut key, the apostrophe. Now let's take our timeline to frame 50 and move our sphere to the bottom middle of our view. If we now scrub the timeline, you'll notice the ball automatically snaps back to its upper left-hand corner position. Note that on the timeline, you see no keyframes. No, with using set key, you have to manually set your keys in place. Let's try that again. We'll go back to frame 50 and move the ball to the bottom middle of the screen. This time, to set the keyframe, we'll click on the large icon down below the timeline directly to the left of set key. The icon looks like a picture of a skeleton key. Moving the time slider a little farther back in time, we now see our newly created key. But watch what happens if we scrub the timeline between 0 and 50. With only one keyframe, one place for Max to remember the sphere's location, the object simply sits in the only place it's been instructed to be. The sphere's starting location, back at frame 0 in the upper left-hand corner, needs to be manually locked down in time. To do that, we'll go back to frame 0 on our timeline, moving the sphere back to the upper left-hand corner. With it now in position, we can set our key. This time, let's use the shortcut, the letter K. Note the new keyframe that's now been created at frame 0. Scrubbing the timeline now, we have animation. So, two specific locations having been memorized, the computer then helping us out to get the sphere from one location on the screen to the other. Let's now move to frame 100, placing the sphere in the upper right-hand corner. Now no key has been set on the timeline. Let's get that in place by again typing K. Once we have all our keyframes in place, we can go ahead and play things back. So now that we know that both the auto key and set key functions work, the question now becomes, which one do you use? Well, that's really a matter of preference. Sometimes you'll use one technique, while at other times you'll use the other. Character animators many times prefer to use the set key method of keying because they feel it better enables them to lock their character down to a distinct and recognizable gesture or mannerism a little easier than when using auto key. What they'll do is position their character in a strong and easy to understand look or pose, then glue that body language in place using the set key. Once that's done, they'll then move in between the stored key locations, adding in the more subtle movements of their character in order to blend the keys together. Set key also works a little better in situations where you want the first key of your animation not to be placed directly at the front of the timeline. Let's take a look at an example of that. We'll delete the sphere, then head back to frame 0 by typing the home key on the keyboard. Let's now go ahead and create a teapot in the middle of the view. Okay, let's say that we want to rotate the teapot a full 360 degrees, but we don't want that rotation to begin until 1 second into the animation. With auto key wanting to always create its first keyframe directly at the start of the timeline, the set key command can set its first key wherever it's needed. So in our situation here, it just makes for a more logical choice in keyframing methods. Let's move to frame 30 on our timeline, and we'll activate the rotate command. Now once we've done that, we'll make sure the set key command is active, and we'll set a key. Now note where that key is located on the timeline. This is going to represent the location and time when the teapot starts its rotation. Let's now move to frame 60, activate the angle snap by typing the letter A, and we'll rotate the teapot 360 degrees. With it now in position, we can go ahead and set a key, again typing K. Let's go ahead and play that back from our first frame, and we'll see how things look. There we go. The teapot stays locked into position for the first 30 frames. Only then does it rotate. If we now wanted the teapot to, let's say, move to the right-hand side of the screen by frame 100, we could easily put that in place also. Let's not have the teapot start moving, though, until 10 frames after the rotation has ended. That'll set our work up to be done at frame 70. Let's move on the timeline to frame 70. We'll activate the Move command and set a key. We can then move to frame 100, slide the teapot to the far right-hand side, then set another key. Let's now shade up our view by typing F3, and we'll play things back. So that'll give you a little insight on using 3ds Max's Set Key command. Now, when animating modifiers using Set Key, there's a special option that you're going to need to activate in order for the modifier changes to be recorded and stored. We'll take a look at how that works using a file named setKeyOnModifier. You can find it in the Working Files folder for this chapter. Let's select our object, head to the modifier list, and apply a stretch modifier. Once that's in place, we'll also apply a bend modifier. Okay, in the modifier stack, let's select the stretch entry. We can now activate the setKey command, setting a key at frame 0. Let's then move to frame 50 and adjust the stretch amount to 0.6. Looking down on the timeline, you'll see the 2 keyframes that we've created. Let's go ahead and scrub between the two using the time slider. As you can see, nothing appears to be changing. When you're animating specifically a modifier using setKey, there's an option that's going to have to be turned on. Let's go ahead and undo a few times, hitting Ctrl-Z on your keyboard to remove those keyframes. Okay, once the timeline's been wiped clean, let's head directly to the right of the Set Key button. You'll see an option sitting just to the right of that named Key Filters. Go ahead and click on that. In the dialog, head down to Modifiers and activate its checkbox. In essence, we're giving Max an additional parameter, in this case a modifier, that we want to be able to keyframe. Once you've done that, go ahead and close the dialog. Okay, let's try this again. We'll return to frame 0, setting a key. This time when we do so, take note of the red brackets that are around the spinners on the stretch modifier. That's a good sign. It says that we now have a keyframe at that frame on that parameter, and that's what we want. Let's now return to frame 50, setting the stretch amount to 0.6. With our new value in place, we can set another key. Now again, take note of the red brackets around the stretch amount spinner. Let's now scrub between 0 and 50 and see how things look. So with our Key Filters option activated, it looks like now things have taken hold. Let's now also animate the bend. We'll have its animation start 10 frames after the stretch has finished up. That'll take us to frame 60. We'll move to the appropriate frame, select the bend modifier in the stack, then hit Set Key again. As you can see, back in the Modify column, the bend now too has the red brackets around its spinners. Let's move to frame 75 and we'll change the bend amount to -200. After typing in the entry, we'll again want to hit Set Key. And to finish things up, we'll go to frame 90, setting the bend to a +200. Now to lock that in, make sure to hit Set Key again. Let's go ahead and play things back from the start. Animating an object's material would require the same thing, that being going into the filters and turning on the material option. Let's do that. We'll click on the Key Filters button and make the appropriate change. Once we've done that, we'll return to our first frame and open up the material editor. We can do that by typing M. Notice the red border around the active sample slot. Max is telling us he's ready to animate. Let's now change the diffuse color swatch to purple and we'll apply the material. To lock that color down at the first frame, we'll now set a key. Once doing so, take a look at the red brackets around both the ambient and diffuse color swatches. Again, this is Max's way of telling us that he's created a keyframe on those parameters at that frame. Let's now move to frame 50 in our timeline and we'll change the diffuse color to green. Once doing that, we can again type K to set a key. Then we can finish things up, traveling to frame 100, changing the diffuse color to red. With our keyframing now done, let's close the material editor and play back our animation. So that'll give you a few things to keep in mind when using Max's Set Key. It's a tad more work, being that the keys are created manually, but you'll certainly find plenty of situations where it's the way to go. I'll go ahead and save this out as Set Key on Modifier completed if you'd like to take a look.